Okay.
Dang, that delay is so weird.
No rabbits today.
All right.
Actually,
Straightforward.
That's actually funny because when I was going to school worship, they were, it was a dumb joke, but it's like the first of every month. If you're the first person to say rabbits to everybody, you win. So you send out like a mass text at like 12:01 that at the first of the month, and you just get everybody. It's just
That's random.
it's very random.
Sounds like
All
good
right.
Christian humor.
Yes.
It's a good Christian time.
Hey, there is some really good Christian humor. I got a lot of stories, good stuff. All
right.
Ready?
You ready?
All right, let's do it.
We're like a hawk on a rabbit this time.
Hawk.
Bam.
Hawk. What's up, watchers? Let me try that again. What's up?
What's up, watchers?
I listened to The Patriot. I got so embarrassed of myself when I was like, freedom! And I was like, that's so embarrassing. But whatever. All right.
It's done now.
It is. What's up, watchers? Welcome back to the Midnight Watch Podcast, the podcast where we discuss the movies that we all love, secretly love, and love to hate. I'm your host, Jeremy, along with my brother Josh, and today we have a real tire smoker of an episode for you guys.
And just to remind y'all, here at The Watch, we are heavy on the spoilers and like to try and discuss movies that are at least 10 years old or older. At the end of the show, we'll rate these movies in 3 categories. Number 1, did it hit its mark when it was released? Number 2, is it still relevant today? And number 3, for personal enjoyment. Well, Jeremy, I don't know if I'm just getting high on gasoline fumes or if I'm just super excited for today's movie.
I don't know why this. I just read this. It's funny. It might be both. It might be both, Josh. Today's movie comes roaring in from one of our favorite authors, the horror master himself, Mr. Stephen Rock and Roll King. I hope your car insurance premiums are paid up, and your life insurance for that matter. Everybody buckle up. We're taking a bloody ride in a sweet 1958 Plymouth Fury. Drivers, start your engines. It's time for Christine.
Woo-wee! Man, this is better than a 20-core pileup at the Talladega 500. Bring it, son!
You know, when I first read that, when you first wrote that, I thought of the Blues Brothers pile up, like that
Nice.
That massive one. I was like, oh, is it going with? Oh, wait, Talladega. Never mind. So then
Well, then I wasn't trying to be Ricky Bobby either, but
help me, Tom Cruise.
I know.
Help me, Jewish God. You're not
I know.
on fire.
I was gonna try to work in, shake and bake.
Yeah, right. That would totally work. That's what I thought you were going with. So, all right, let's see what we got going on today. We're reviewing the awesome movie Christine. Oh, sorry, it may be awesome. We're not sure if it's awesome. We haven't gotten down to our rating system yet. All right, let's jump right into this.
And just a sidebar, I totally embarrassed my family in the other room with my hillbillying
they'll get
just now.
Well, I was gonna say they'll get used to it. Never mind. You've been married for quite a while, so if they're not used to it now.
No, I'm just going to keep the embarrassment rolling. Okay, back to what you were talking about.
All right, let's see what we got here. So we got Christine. It came out in 1983. John Carpenter was actually kind of on a roll when this came out. So he had Halloween in 1978. And then I think he directed something else. And then he directed, and then he had Escape from New York in 81, The Thing in 82, and Christine in 83. Now, 83, or the early 80s, in the late 70s, like Stephen King's books, the rights were being sold off to movies before the books were even published. He was that hot of an author at that time.
Right.
So like anything that he was writing was going to get turned into a movie. And it's interesting, the screenwriter of this movie actually had a choice. He could work on Cujo or he could work on Christine. And so he thought the idea of a killer dog was stupid, so he went with a killer car, which...
Right.
So much less stupid.
So much scarier.
I'm going to say right up front, Stephen King's books, very creepy, very scary. It doesn't matter what he writes about most of the time. If he's going for horror, he's going to get it. It's pretty scary.
Sure.
Does that transition to a movie very well?
Right. Well, we're going to find out tonight. Little side note, I don't ever find his books scary personally, even though he is by far my favorite author. It's just, I don't know, his characters are so engaging, but I usually, if anything like weirds me out or bothers me, it's when the just the regular characters, the human characters, if they just get crazy on each other, that really weirds me out more than some supernatural, otherworldly, horrible thing.
I think
but anyways.
Oh yeah, I'm going to jump on that rabbit trail real quick too. That I definitely, the two books of his that actually creeped me out the most was Gerald's Game and then Lisey's Story. But both of them, though, the scariest parts were dealing with the potentially unknown violence from another human character.
Right.
And so, but he writes really, really good characters.
Yes.
Which is what makes it's scary, because you care about the characters.
Right. I completely agree.
So, okay, let's jump right into it again. Budget, $9 million. That's about the same as Escape from New York. Box office from this, $21 million. Which is kind of funny. That surprised me because this movie was not really well received by critics and by Stephen King fans, actually. They considered it kind of a dud. So I guess everybody went to go see it, kind of like Spider-Man 3. And then they decided they didn't really like it too much. So that was interesting. It's starring Keith Gordon, John Stockwell, Alexandra Paul, and Harry Dean Stanton. I gotta love some Harry Dean Stanton. I didn't realize he's in like every other movie, apparently. He was He was also in Escape from New York.
Exactly.
All right.
I think he's kind of like one of those, how certain directors have like their actors they like to use all the time. I kind of feel like he was one for Carpenter.
Yeah, and also Stephen King apparently really liked him because he named 2 prison guards in The Green Mile after Harry Dean Stanton. One of them was named Harry something, and the other one's named Dean Stanton. And Harry Dean Stanton is in the movie The Green Mile. He plays a different character.
Right.
Pretty cool.
Very cool. All right, moving along.
All right, so I got a ton of trivia, but I always drop it way too early. So, Josh, anything to say before we go into that synopsis?
Well, if I can find my way in my notes back to the synopsis, that would be super helpful right now.
It's easy. It's imdb.com.
No, dang it. I actually wrote up a synopsis here. Okay, found it.
Do you hear that? We're getting professional now.
We're getting professional now.
We're actually going to stop stealing other people's... Well, that's not true. I find trivia all over the internet.
Bite your tongue. We will continually steal other people's things. If it's good, we're taking it.
That's true. They're mine.
Okay. So anybody out there, if you've already seen this movie, love this movie, all of that, you can go ahead and skip ahead if you don't want to listen to my little synopsis here. Also... there are some parts. Synapses.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
You want to try that again?
I was going to say something about make fun of my speechifying in the South, but
it's a subconscious Matrix reference. That's what it is. There you go. Had to sneak it in.
Right. Every episode. Got to put it in. Okay. No, what I was going to say about the synopsis is, I definitely left some parts out, but I'm trying to not take up so much time, kind of like I am now. And so we can get on to discussing the movie. But this at least will give you, if you've not seen the movie and you don't care about seeing the movie, but you want to know what we're talking about, gives you a good idea. And I'm going to start. So here we go. The movie begins in 1957 as Christine is about to roll off the assembly line in Detroit. A final inspection is happening, and Christine manages to injure one worker and kill another. Now we know what kind of a car she is. Then it jumps forward to 1978. A gorgeous 68 Dodge Charger, driven by high schooler Dennis Gilder, pulls into the driveway of loser nerd Arnie Cunningham. Arnie is dominated by his parents and picked on ruthlessly by kids at school. Dennis is really his only friend. Later that day, after an altercation in shop class, 4 bullies who are picking on Arnie are expelled from the school. They promised revenge on Arnie for telling on them. Next, on the way home after school, Dennis and Arnie drive by a beat-up old Plymouth Fury. Arnie tells Dennis to pull over and ends up buying the car from an old man named George LeBay. We learn from LeBay that the car's previous owner was his younger brother Roland, and that his brother's daughter and wife had both died in that car. Roland also ended up committing suicide in the car as well. None of this deters Arnie, as he has fallen head over heels in love with his car. As Arnie restores this car, he slowly begins changing himself. He stops wearing glasses and starts dressing like a 50s greaser. His demeanor grows darker and he gets meaner. He starts dating Lee, the new cute girl at school. This makes Christine jealous, and she tries to kill Lee while she and Arnie are at the drive-in. After this happens, the 4 bullies sneak into the garage where Arnie keeps his Christine, and they smash her to pieces. Christine restores herself, hunts down the bullies, and kills them all. At this point, a state police detective starts investigating these events. Arnie has solid alibis, but also has an attitude that shows he doesn't care much about what has happened. He even enjoys hearing that the murders occurred. Lee and Dennis don't like what is happening to Arnie and agree that Christine is deadly. They decide to destroy Christine once and for all. They force a showdown at the garage where Arnie keeps her. Dennis hotwires a bulldozer, and after an intense battle, they manage to flatten her. This is after they discover that Arnie was driving her and participating in trying to eliminate them. Arnie dies after he is thrown through the windshield and impaled with a large shard of glass. Christine is taken to a wrecking yard and put into a car compactor. In the last scene, we see part of her grill start to move, insinuating that she's not dead yet.
Ooh, yes. And
So,
right off the bat, something interesting here. I typed in trying to gather information about this film, and the first thing that popped up was Christine's sequel. So I clicked on that, and I was like, "There's a sequel to this movie? Maybe like straight to DVD or something." Apparently, Stephen King in 2015 announced that he was going to write a sequel called Christine Lives. It has been a few months since 2015, and I haven't heard anything else. So I don't know if it's just like a back burner thing that he's working on, or if he's at, because since Dr. Sleep was so well received, which again, that is actually a really, really good book.
Yes, excellent book.
Yes. And so I thought that was interesting. So we'll see. Hopefully, maybe that'll pop up. I remember I told you, Josh, that I was going to reread this book before we did the podcast.
Yes.
I ran out of time. I was reading too much of the Dark Tower series, so I didn't get to it. But
did you start it at all? Into it at all?
Yeah, I read the first 100 pages, and then I just got distracted. It was actually really good. I didn't even mean to read that much that night. It's a great book. Definitely check it out. This is one book. Oh yeah, let's just jump into where we were when we first. We totally skipped that by accident. Where were you the first time you watched this, Josh?
Well, I have to say that until a few days ago, when I sat down and watched it straight through, I had not seen this movie straight through.
Really?
And a big part of that is, like a lot of Stephen King fans, I, for a long time, did not like how his horror stories were portrayed in film.
Yeah.
In fact, I was just really disappointed. So I think two things I've just really, I don't know, in the last 6-7 years, just kind of had a love growing in me for, 70s and 80s horror movies. And
right on.
So there's that. And then there's also, I hadn't read this book in a while, and I was able to go into this movie just, I knew the gist of the story, but I basically a kind of a clean slate, and I wasn't expecting a whole lot. And yeah, so I officially saw it all the way through just a few days ago. But when I've mentioned before, when I was working in Sacramento, for Southwest Airlines, by the way, in case anybody wanted to know. My mysterious job. So anyways, we had on Sundays, a group of my buddies and I, in between working flights, we had our Sacramento International Film Society club, basically. And so we did a lot of old horror movies. And that was part of why I think I really just started to really enjoy these. So it had been on, and I'd seen like bits and pieces of it in between running out to work a flight and stuff like that. So I didn't really give it a fair look until recently.
Well, it's kind of a slow burn. It's not exactly one that has a ton of showstopper moments, I would say. But I will say, when it pulls out the stops, it pulls out the stops. Like, straight up. Let's get it. Just real quick, that scene when Christine, that car is on fire, I was like, dude, how the heck did they do that? That looks amazing. There's no CG in that. Like, I was like, that is freaking awesome. Like,
we're kind of getting ahead of ourselves, but the practical special effects in this movie are dope. They are so cool.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, like that the car on fire scene that's driving down the road is probably one of the coolest scenes that I've seen, sequences in a movie in a long time. This movie came out in 1983, and I was just like, I don't remember that at all when I saw this movie.
It was epic. But yeah, we'll get back to that scene.
Okay, so yeah,
When was the first time you saw this?
So I watched this movie about 10 years ago. I got, let's see, what was 10 years ago? Yeah, 2010. Actually, realistically, it's probably more like 12 years ago. I really got into Stephen King's books very heavily and started collecting. So anything with his name on it, I would read it and then watch anything that this was made off of. So I watched a lot of terrible films. And which we're going to talk about a lot of those because there's so many. There's oh man, there's so many movies that I forgot about. But anyways, yeah. So I read the book, loved the book, and then I watched the movie right afterwards. And so yeah, that was probably 2008 when I saw that. So that was when I watched a lot of Stephen King movies. I was kind of in the Stephen King zone, which is interesting because now since it came out in 2017, there's been a Stephen King renaissance, not as big as the early 80s, late 70s when he was super hot.
Right.
But it's there, and there's a ton of Stephen King fans out there. Shout out.
Yeah.
So let's
holla.
Right. So I've got a lot to talk about this movie.
Real quick, did you like it when you first saw it?
Oh yeah, sorry.
Especially after having just read the book, did you enjoy it?
Yes, actually, I did. I thought it was one of the movies that actually stuck decently well to the yeah, it was good. It wasn't terrible, god awful, but it wasn't amazing, but it was good. That's what I remember. So
that's cool.
So I went into this movie with a fond memory and was excited to see if it would hold up with what I remember of 12 years ago, which actually, to tell you the truth, I actually don't remember most of this movie. I just remember that I liked it and I had positive feelings about it.
That's cool.
Yeah. So do we want to talk about I know we wanted to talk about the language in this movie specifically. So do we want to just jump right into that conversation right now?
No, I have a couple other things to kind of work through as we get to that point.
Oh, okay. Excuse me. No, go ahead.
So just basically the way this movie opens, they're playing the song Bad to the Bone.
Oh, yeah.
And I immediately was like, oh, that's so Stephen King, because anybody who's read his books, the man is all about rock and roll. His books are so infused with classic rock, and also, what we consider classic rock now wasn't back then. It was actually probably fairly modern,
right?
For the time stuff coming out in the early 80s, and the songs weren't that old actually, but it just was. I was just like, wow, what a great choice of a song. It's obviously kind of talking about this car a little bit. Old cars are super cool, and you get that kind of that bad hot rod kind of vibe about it.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just, yeah.
Yeah. So the other thing is, it's also, you get that feeling of, a teenager a little bit too. Sometimes, when you're feeling awesome as a teenager and you feel super bad to the bone.
Oh, yeah.
Which is kind of a corny old way to say it, but you kind of get that vibe as the movie starts to open up and you start to see these characters and they're, upperclassmen. They're about ready to be adults, but basically think they are adults already and trying to act like them, and they're acting super tough. And I think, at least from the male perspective, there's definitely a lot of that, as you're in high school and reaching that time in life.
Yeah, that's when the testosterone is hitting on.
It is roaring.
It is roaring, hitting on all cylinders there, folks.
Yes. The other thing I love too, as soon as you're seeing her rolling off the
assembly line,
the assembly line. Thank you. I say factory line, assembly line. Her radio at one point starts playing. Dang it, I just forgot the song too. But an oldie song about love or whatnot. And it's when she'd already smashed the dude's arm in the hood of the car.
Oh yeah.
And then the second guy gets in there and he's liking the song and he flicks his cigar ash and it lands on the seat.
Yeah, what was up with that? I honestly, to tell you the truth, I call BS on that, because I'm like, why would you bring a freaking lit cigar into a brand new? I feel like he would have gotten fired. So I don't blame her for killing him. Actually, I'm just like, well, like, seriously? I mean, it's a bright red car. Come on, like, smoking. You know that thing's gonna pull in some money,
right? Yeah. but it happened in the movie.
Yes,
but
it did.
also, it immediately sets up that music is going to be a big part of this movie, and that whatever is playing in her radio in the car, that is definitely saying what her mood is or what she's feeling in the moment. Which it's obvious, but I just thought that was such a cool thing to see. Do you remember, was that part of it in the book as well?
You know, unfortunately, in the first 100 pages that I read.
That didn't really get into that.
No, but I actually did want to talk about the music as well, because John Carpenter is, as we know, a composer as well as a writer and director, and he was credited with composing this music along with somebody else who I forgot his name. But this is interesting because this movie does not have a theme. I was listening specifically, and like the opening sequences when they show all of the credits, there's no music. You just hear the car start up and the engine roll, and that I thought was very unusual because John Carpenter is very famous for his music in his movies. He has got great themes, and the fact that there's the theme in this music is all of the 50s doo-wop love songs.
Right.
And it's a big deal. And so I thought that was actually really cool that John Carpenter took a back seat. Hey, that's a pun. To Stephen King's writing to allow the songs that are in Stephen King's books to play the main part of like the doo-wop music is like the theme for Christine.
Right. It's very true. I actually made a note of it that as soon as his scoring came in, we're just about at 36 minutes into the movie.
Yeah.
And that synthesizer starts coming in.
Yeah.
Which always gets me excited because I love it. And I thought it was interesting because by that point, you almost forget that it's a Carpenter movie because he has such a distinct feel. And not to say that he doesn't have his fingerprints on this movie. But one note that I made, and I'll probably come back to it later, is that I feel like this movie is more King than Carpenter.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I definitely felt that. And
it's tough because I love Stephen King. I really love John Carpenter, and there's a part of me that would wish that there was a little bit more of John Carpenter in it, but it probably would have taken away from letting that Stephen King vibe come through as strong as it did.
Yeah, I think it is a little misleading when it says John Carpenter's Christine.
Right.
It is directed by him, but I really feel like this actually calls to the craftsmanship of John Carpenter, of him not having an ego. And maybe this is all BS, but this is my opinion, that he just actually was like, you know what? He was friends with Stephen King. And so he was like, let's make this movie the best Stephen King movie that I can do. And I thought that was cool, actually. And I felt like this movie it feels a lot more Stephen King than a lot of Stephen King's books. And that's why I wanted to talk about the language in this movie, actually. But we'll jump into that when you're ready.
Sure. I was going to say I did notice on the interwebs when I was also doing a little bit of research, but apparently Carpenter was picked to do this movie, but then was unavailable because he was actually working on the adaptation for another Stephen King movie, Firestarter.
Oh, yeah.
So he was working on that, and then also an adaptation of another book by Eric Van Lustbader called The Ninja.
Oh, yeah. I've not read that, but I've heard of it. Okay.
So, and then they eventually came back to Carpenter. He was able to work on it. And that's a funny quote here. It says, in retrospect, Carpenter stated that upon reading Christine, he felt that it just wasn't very frightening, but it was something I needed to do at the time in my career.
That actually makes a lot of sense because, let's see, you got Escape from New York, which was received well. Right after that, you have The Thing, which we won't talk about because we're going to review that at some point.
Yes.
And then,
can't wait.
And then we have Christine, which is probably his biggest movie so far because when he did Halloween, he was an independent director. Mm-hmm. And I know he's probably most famously remembered for Halloween, well, in certain circles. But
sure.
Yeah. So that makes sense, though, that actually doing Christine or something like that would actually make sense because Stephen King was like, they sold the rights to the movie and started making the film before the before the book even came out.
Right.
So, one thing real quick, correct me on this for sure, but I saw that like there's several major differences actually from the book to the movie. One of the biggest ones is in the movie Christine, they have the extra scene at the beginning where she has always been evil. The car has always been evil. and in
Right.
the book, it's actually what's his name, Lefray.
Well, okay, so this is where it's a little bit. Well, I guess this part's kind of the same. So you have the old man George LeBay, who he buys it from.
What's his brother's name again?
Roland. Which little tidbit here for which all you Stephen King fans know: Stephen King always references other characters and other things in his books. Like he references other characters and other books that he's written in his current book that you're reading. Plus, he always, and I wish I was a bigger Stephen King nerd, but allegedly he always references the Dark Tower in some way in each of his books. Also,
really,
whether it's a character or a land or something having to do with the Dark Tower series,
and that has to do with Roland of
Gilead.
That makes sense.
I thought that was interesting.
That seems a little far stretching, though. To be honest, I think that was since he had only written the first book when this book came out, and he didn't really know what he was going to go with the story yet. So I wonder if he this is me just totally nerding out for a second, but I wonder if he retroactively rewrote his older books into it as the Dark Tower series came out over the 30 years that it took for him to write the series.
Like I said, I've noticed it in a lot of the books, but I haven't, really. Anyways, any big Stephen King nerds out there, please, we'd love to hear your 2 cents. Throw it up on
that'd be great.
Facebook or Instagram or something. Be cool to get a discussion going on that.
That would be fantastic. I'd love to know that.
But the younger brother Roland, anyways, whoever had the car first, and I think it still was a younger brother that had the car, because I had to read the cliff notes on this just to refresh, because I also didn't get a chance to reread the book before we did this. But in the book, it's the spirit of Roland, or the brother that had the car that his family died. He kind of basically sacrificed his family so that he could live on forever.
Because I remember
as a ghost in the car, basically. So he's an absolutely evil dude, and then the car just kind of takes on his evilness.
Right, which is why the car breaks down, and just after he dies, the car just goes into disrepair. And then when Arnie, good old Andy, I'm thinking of Parks and Recs, Andy Dwyer. Anyways, when Arnie takes the car, takes a liking to it, then it starts to feed off of him, and it comes back alive. And so that's why it keeps going. And in the movie, they skip it to have the car just be possessed with itself, which actually I think is a smart move screenplay wise, because
absolutely
too much time would be explained on it. And also too, how the evilness, not even a ghost, but Stephen King gets really good at explaining the nastiness of certain characters. So when you're reading it, you feel dirty because this guy is a piece of poo, and he's just disgusting, and that goes in with the language, which we'll get into eventually.
Yes, let's just get in there now. This early Stephen King books, to me, there's a real how did I say it in my notes here? That's really rough and crass, and there's just the language that he uses. There's just a ton of profanity. As he gets older as a writer, you start to see that just kind of get a little more tasteful.
Over the year, I'm just butting in real quick. Over the years, I would say even the last 10 years compared to his first several books, I read The Shining and Doctor Sleep back to back, and
that's a special technique, boys and girls, where you hold both books together, and it's called bap to bap.
Right, exactly.
And you're that was terrible.
I feel so awkward right now. So
I do too.
And so, anyways, just the comparison of him growing as an author, because he's been an author for literally 50 years now. So he has grown tremendously. So, anyways, back to you, Josh. Go ahead.
So you just have that real kind of crass roughness, like I was saying, in the language. But I also feel like, and he also, as another example, he wrote Carrie. That was the first book that got published.
Oh yeah,
and also was a hit as a movie. And it also that movie focused a lot on bullying, basically, and high school life and how rough that can be. And then you get that again here in Christine with this nerd kid and gets picked on, and the revenge factor and whatnot, which I think is a little bit interesting. I read our autobiography about him, and from what I could see, he was actually a pretty popular kid in school. So he definitely wasn't the kid that was picked on and everything. And maybe he was being a little kind in his remembering. Maybe he was the bully. But it sounds like he was a little bit of like the clown almost, and just like this big, huge, goofy guy who was just, more or less pretty likable.
Well, he has to be likable. I mean, he's well liked by lots of people in many different industries, so that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He seems like a very legit dude.
Very approachable person.
I don't tend to I don't really care about celebrities. Like, oh, let me get my picture, let me get an autograph. But he's actually somebody I would love to go meet.
That'd be cool.
I would go up and, introduce myself. But going back to the language. So the other thing I think for a lot of kids, by the time, growing up, you're experimenting with profanity, and even if you live in a really conservative home, we lived in a really conservative home, and I still, depending on what friends I was around, I was trying out, swear words left and right.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And then I think it's just part of growing up. It's just what you do, and especially by the time you get to high school, man, you're cursing like a sailor. You're over cursing. Like, you think you're being an adult, but it's just until you come to work on the ramp at Southwest Airlines, and then you'll see that never changes. But
yeah.
But anyways, I felt like this movie definitely captured that aspect of high school life.
Shake it right now.
I can't, man. I got need more coffee. Anyways, so that. I felt like that definitely was, he hit the nail on the head. Whether it was Carpenter or just the screenwriter, it just definitely captured the style that King would portray at, the being in high school and what that's like. So I thought it worked really good, even though there's a lot of profanity, but it definitely feels right as far as that's just kind of high school life for a lot of kids. I'm not saying every kid that has, in high school was that way, had a dirty mouth, but
no, Josh, every kid.
Okay, all right. You hear that, girls?
You may not say it, but you might be going to bed at night and you're like, gotta say it.
Make sure I go yell at my kids after this. I know you've been using dirty words.
Don't use them dirty words. Okay. I feel like I'm becoming a Stephen King character myself.
That's okay.
All right, keep going.
Okay, so one thing in the movie, you first hear it in the movie when the old man who owns Christine, he's talking to Dennis, and he's kind of breaking down the history of the car and the people that died and whatnot, and he ends up kind of snapping at Dennis, and I'm gonna say it, man. I'm gonna say it for the first time on the Midnight Watch podcast. I'm gonna use a cuss word.
Watch out, guys! Here it comes. Cuss word's coming up.
But he calls him a shitter. And it's in such a way that it's like a special word almost. And in the book, this word gets used a lot. And it's kind of like it was the word that the character Roland, who first owned the car, who was an evil person and basically sacrificed his family so that he could live forever. It was a word that he would use to describe anyone that disagreed with him or got in his way. And it was like extra derogatory. It was very much a way of putting a person down, really describing them as being dirty and worthless. Everyone is beneath Christine and him. And so you see the next owner, which is his brother. He uses that word. And then by the time Arnie really starts putting time into Christine, and you start to see him, I would say evolve, but sort of de-evolve, he starts using that word.
Ooh, I think the word that you're looking for him is de-evolved. Okay, never mind. Continue.
Oh, there we go.
Continue.
Dude, we were dropping the bomb on our jokes tonight. And I just messed that up too, dropping the bomb. We're dropping the ball. Oh, okay. Man.
Oh, okay. Okay,
anywho, moving along. So it's just, to me, it was interesting that the language really does kind of play a part in this movie.
Yeah.
More so than just carrying the dialogue along.
Yeah. So what I totally agree. And the thing that really stuck out to me when I was watching this movie was Stephen King has a very specific style. That's why I brought it up, where it's like where you feel gross and nasty when like certain characters are talking. And the reason he doesn't censor himself at all when he's talking like certain things. And so like I would say you cannot read these books out loud because they'd be like, hey, you can't say that. So, but so I thought this is the first movie. And I'm excited because over this next year, we're gonna actually review a lot of Stephen King movies. But this is the first movie I saw where it like distinctively the language and the style of talking in this movie is very much Stephen King's writing, like straight from the book.
Yeah.
They didn't soften it at all. And actually, I have a cool note here. According to Bill Phillips, the movie, actually, this is another thing. Most of the violence is off screen. This is not a bloody movie at all. Like,
right.
I think the bloodiest scene in the movie is when Arnie gets stuck with some glass and he pulls it out. And that's also off screen when he pulls it out.
Right.
And so most of this movie, the violence is off screen. So it was actually going to be PG because the PG-13 rating wasn't out yet. And so they actually intentionally made the language in this movie harder and added the F-bomb in this movie a lot more to keep it R-rated because it has to be R-rated if it's Stephen King. You're not going to go see a Stephen King movie.
Well, especially then because he was so edgy. He was the cool, sexy new writer.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I thought that was interesting. And so I actually really enjoyed the crassness and the just open crassness of this movie.
Right.
And it's shocking. It's really shocking.
Sure.
And
but it feels real though.
It does feel real. And I thought that was fantastic. And a lot of these actors at the time were no names. They specifically casted actors that were nobodies. And to be honest, I didn't recognize any in this movie except for Harry Dean Stanton. I know that the main actress, Alexandria, I forgot her name, Alexandria Paul, has been in several other things too. And Keith Gordon, who plays Arnie, I think he's transferred to being more of a director now instead of an actor. But anyway, I thought they all did a great job, actually.
Yes. That was something I noticed right away in my notes. I just was like, man, the acting isn't bad.
No. Especially because like high school movies are hit or miss. And I thought they all did a great job. And there's one part too. My wife pointed out that when Arnie's talking to what's his face, his best friend,
Dennis.
Dennis. Yeah, when he's talking to Dennis and Dennis is in the hotel, I'm sorry, the hospital bed, same thing. And his eyes like change when he's like halfway through his conversation when he starts talking about Christine. And I thought that was really cool. And so like, yeah, they did a good job acting in this movie for sure.
Right. Well, in the book, as the more time that Arnie spends with Christine, at first you see him kind of get cooler and he ends up, looking more like a 50s greaser, rock and roll dude. But the more time that he's with Christine and it's like the more, I don't know, love he puts into her, he starts deteriorating and he starts looking like an old man. I think in the book you start to see like his hair starts to thin.
Oh, really?
Teeth start to fall out, and he's just the parasitic relationship is really taking a physical toll on him. But in the movie, it's more in his mannerisms, but you do see it in the eyes though. That's the one thing. Because at first I was just a little bit disappointed. I was like, oh man, you don't see him deteriorate, but you do just notice by the end of the movie, or at least the second half of the movie, his eyes are really like the circles around his eyes, like his eyes are really sunk in. There's a lot of dark.
Yeah.
Makeup, I guess. But anyways, it just shows like, man, something's really wearing on him.
I thought it was interesting because I will say this, in the first 100 pages of the book, they really hammer down the fact that Arnie is ugly. And he's ugly because he has so much acne.
Right.
And in the movie, the actor, Keith Gordon, has no acne at all. And I mean, good for him. But I was kind of surprised that they didn't do any special effects or anything like that. Just to show
that would have been such an easy thing to do.
Right. Just because I've had some friends that, have had extremely terrible acne that has scarred their faces. And like I've known them now when they're in their 30s and they still almost look like they have acne because of just unfortunately how that happens with some people. Right. And so I just was kind of surprised though that they completely cut that out. And so that could have been kind of something easy. But anyways,
but they definitely set up in that first scene where you see him. He's a dork. Like he's uncoordinated. He's your classic movie nerd. I mean, Revenge of the Nerds, like he would fit right in.
Yeah, he would. All he
Got
needed
the Coke bottle glasses, and he's there.
All he needed was like a really good awkward laugh.
Right.
Yeah.
You're about to say something.
Yeah, I just so this movie, they're all supposed to be seniors because it takes place over September through December, I think. I don't know if it goes any farther beyond that. This movie came out at Christmas, by the way. Do you know if because it says every couple scenes it'll say September and then it'll say October. Did it go past December, or was the movie ended in December?
Dang it! I feel like it went into the new year.
I thought so too.
I feel like it went into 79.
Well, anyways, they're still in high school, and so some of these people that are high school students are buying beer, and I was like, how the heck are they buying beer? You know, like that, like
right.
You got to be 21 for that. And then I actually looked it up, and apparently, literally the next year in July, President Ronald Reagan passed the law of changing from being 18 to 21 to drink. So I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Well, not only that, I think it was just a heck of a lot easier to go buy beer and cigarettes and stuff. I remember Dad telling me a story when he was a little kid. I mean, a grade schooler, and Grandma would send him to the corner store to buy her cigarettes. Yeah, and the store owner would just oh, hey, here you go, say hi to your mom. Just
wow.
It was just a lot more trusting back then. So I think it would have been a lot easier for somebody to roll in there and be like, oh, it's for my dad. Right.
And then just break one open, and yeah, that's true.
So something that really two things. The character who played George LeBay, the cranky old man, a guy named Robert Blossom. Mm-hmm. What a cool character actor.
Oh, really?
He was super fun. Like, just in the movie, I just thought he was such a cool cranky old man kind of a character. And it turns out that's basically what his entire career was playing the cantankerous old man character. Every movie.
Real?
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So he was just always that kind of character.
He was born with an old face.
Yeah, basically. Okay, so the biggest thing, and this totally surprised me. I didn't feel this way when I read the book. But what really surprised me in watching this movie was I just started remembering back to when I got my first car, which was our grandparents' car. It was a 1973 Pontiac Le Mans,
yes.
Mustard yellow, got the small block Chevy V8 dual exhaust with MagnaFlow mufflers on it. And like, that car was totally everything to me. It was freedom. It was identity. It was a cool factor. It was the bandwagon. It was a mobile makeout station. I mean, it something like that. And not just because that car was specific, particularly cool or not, because I know other people who was like, oh man, I had an 86 Corolla. That car was awesome. And it's
right.
Just that experience of having that freedom, and it's like a person in your life. And then a lot of times, you end up naming that car.
Yeah, no, that's true. I mean, your car was actually cool. Mine was a 95 Mazda Protege that the muffler was falling out and the freaking thing smoked more than a chimney. But it was, I mean, I did name it. Yeah, I named it the Boss. It was a manual. It was a ton of fun.
Right.
It freaking rolled for a long time, dude. Yeah. So I feel you. I think you're absolutely right. It really connected with that. Your first car, freedom. Yeah, that's awesome.
So I just wasn't expecting that. And I don't know if it's just where I'm at in my life. And I just made me think back to that time in my life. But I thought the movie captured the importance of that. And just the cars in that movie in general. I mean, not only Christina's obviously a character, but like you see that 68 Charger, that blue 68 Charger roll up, the one that Dennis drives. That car is sexy. That is such a cool looking car. And I think also, and I've heard other people talk about this too, but cars in movies up until, I don't know, probably, honestly, the Fast and the Furious are probably the last movies that really cars were a big deal in the movie. But before that, cars had such a heavy presence in movies because it was such a, I don't know, impactful thing in your life, more so than they kind of are today for some people. But I mean, heck, a lot of people are trying to get rid of cars, so everything is just autonomous and you just hop in, it drives you everywhere.
That's just a different mindset and different time in life for sure.
but the cars in this movie really, really stand out. I mean, obviously Christine, but that Charger, and then later one of the bullies, he's driving a super sweet, either a 67 or 68 Camaro, I think. Right, but it's before she bursts into flames.
Yes.
She's chasing him down in that, and they got some cool car stuff going on there.
Yeah, that's really cool actually too. When the guy gets out of the car and he's like, "This dude's chasing us," and then Christine just freaking rams the crap out of that car.
Oh yeah,
and it was cool for that scene actually. I did a little research, and it said that they actually took the engine out of that car when Christine rammed it to make the car lighter,
right,
and more impactful. So yeah, dude. So they had over 28 different Plymouth Furies.
I was gonna get into that.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. No,
Do it.
No, you go ahead. You're the car guy. Go for it.
So there was the large amount of cars that they collected, but then they basically pieced, from what I was reading, they pieced together 17 of them, were specifically for the movie. Several of which were destroyed, because my thought as I'm watching this, I was like, oh man, how many Furies did they destroy to make this movie? Because I know like with the show Dukes of Hazzard, like they just destroyed so many of those Chargers for the show. Or like Knight Rider, there was Firebirds that were just mangled all the time for the show. So I was just thinking like, man, how many did they destroy? Because I'm definitely a car buff. And so anyways, 17 were used for the movie. Some of them of the cars were actually Plymouth Savoys and Belvederes that were modified to look like the Fury. And just in case anybody wanted to know, those are all basically the same car. They're just different trim levels.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
And they, as far as like the special effects go, like whenever the car got all smashed together, and then they show her like her fixing herself.
Oh yeah, that's such a cool scene.
Regenerating. Yeah, and it's all basic, simple, just playing the scene in reverse. They would smash it and then just play the film backwards, and everything would pop out the way it was supposed to be. So there was just a ton of that being used. Well, I guess they built one rig though for when the whole grill pops back into place. They actually took the engine out on that car and put some kind of like hydraulic arm inside it to push it, or to pull it in, and then also to push it back out.
Well, that was actually, I've got some news on that one. That is a mock-up that was in plastic. It actually looked more like metal on camera than actual metal. And the pumps were attached to cables, and I'm just reading this real quick. This is not my wording. Which were in turn attached to the car's bodywork, and when they were compressed, they would suck the paneling inwards, right, and then of course play it in reverse. Which, as I was watching it, I was like, yeah, they totally just played this in reverse. It's a cool sequence still. It is. That's why I love movie magic, is because when they pull off a scene, they pull off a scene. You're just like, right. I know, and that's why I know how they did it from like watching enough makings of movies, but still, you're just like, oh, that's so freaking cool. That's ingenious.
It is. Well, it's just there was artistic manual craftsmanship. That went into that versus, and nothing against CGI and the hours that are spent at a computer making it look awesome. That's great, and I'm not taking away from that, but it's actually it really is cheaper and easier to do that now than it is to do the practical stuff, like lighting her on fire, the car on fire, and the car driving around. I mean, there was a real stunt man wearing a fireproof suit in there and driving the car that was on fire. I mean, not just a little on fire, it was engulfed in flames.
Oh, dude, yeah.
It was such an impressive scene, and somebody actually did that, versus these days the liability of that guy, the driver might die, and everything that would go into shooting that shot, they would have to do it digitally.
Right. And it also saves on time and different stuff. But that's why I was like, that scene is so cool. So yeah, I will say, whether you like Stephen King, whether you like cars or whatever, Google that sequence or watch the movie just for that. It's so freaking cool. That scene where the car's on fire, pulls out of an explode, which, by the way, they built that entire gas station specifically to blow it up.
That was an epic explosion, dude. That was such a good explosion.
That was, to me, I was like, this is a Robert Rodriguez gas station explosion.
Oh, yeah. For sure. Yeah, you know where Robert Rodriguez got some inspiration from.
Oh, dude. Yeah, that was so freaking cool. I thought that was freaking awesome, though. But anyways, yeah, continue.
So, right before that, though, a little shout out here to John Carpenter's music writing again. Before that group of bullies, it was 3 of them, because there was 4 altogether, but 3 of them ended up dying in that whole sequence. 2 in the car. One of them worked at the gas station that they pulled into. But the first bully that Christine runs down.
I just realized that the 4th bully was the guy working at the gas station. I thought it was just some random. I was like, oh, some random guy got killed. Okay. Okay.
So yeah. So then, but the first one is the character's name was Mookie, and Christine basically is just chasing him. He's running on foot, and she's chasing him. And but during that whole sequence where she's running him down, driving him down as he's running, the Carpenter's music kicks in, and it's got this awesome I don't know, he just does great running music. The character's running,
good,
and it's just this
music.
Yeah, it is. It's just suspenseful running music, and it's so him. And as soon as that kicked in, you're just definitely like, okay, we're watching John Carpenter right now.
Oh yeah. I also like that sequence too at the end when you're waiting for they're waiting for Christine to show up, and then all of a sudden her lights flip on when they're inside the station, because they're gonna try to run her over with the huge caterpillar, and it's
the bulldozer.
Yeah. And so then her lights flip on, and you realize she's been in there all along, and then like that music kicks in, and you're like, yes. Oh snap, which is it immediately, the stakes, you feel the stakes at hand of what's going on, even though to be honest, if you stay in the bulldozer, you're probably fine. But but anyways, yeah.
Oh, I gotta bring that up. We're kind of getting to that part in the movie. The character Lee, the girl,
yeah,
she's actually very resourceful for a female character in a horror movie.
I mean, at this time, yeah.
She's not the typical, kind of ditzy female character that you see a lot of. And I was wondering if that is, or what you think about it, if this is particularly a John Carpenter move to have a strong female character, because you have that in Halloween. You even had that in Escape from New York. Mm-hmm. It just seems to be a little bit of a common thread, possibly. And maybe I'm just trying to read more into it than there is, but I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I don't... I think that, yeah, I just think that feminism is best defined when you don't think of them as women. You think of them as, this is another main character, and it doesn't matter what their gender is. They're like very important to the story. And so we'll probably cut this part out. I don't know, but
you're so political, bro.
I know. I just get on a rant, Yeah. I didn't notice it as being anything massive. I just thought she was one of the main 3 characters in the movie.
Yeah.
But so I'm sorry to cut the rug out from underneath you.
No, that's all right. It could totally just be in my own head. Again, anybody listen to this and wants to chime in, we'd love to hear. Yeah. There was one other little thing towards the end there when Arnie picks up Dennis, and Dennis is trying to have a heart-to-heart with him, like, bro, you got to get rid of this car. There's something wrong here. And so when soon as he picks him up, Arnie says to Dennis, he's like, let's motivate, which is a totally made up word. But that was another one of the words in the book that was used often, just coming from Arnie started using that word. That was a word that the previous owner had used. Really? Again, one of those, I don't know, through osmosis or whatever, just like saying the other word.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that. I really didn't notice
the
that.
Poop word.
The poop word. Okay.
Yeah, that was a deep nerd thing there. And then also, it's a good thing that his friend Dennis had a Class A license to operate that that humongous bulldozer.
I thought that was funny. They show like a little warm-up scene, and I'm like, okay, yeah, sure, go, yeah. But you learned it that fast,
right? Good thing you drove heavy machinery, over summer break.
Yeah. Let me clarify real quick. I have not driven heavy machinery, so maybe it is that easy. It could be that easy. I don't know.
It could be. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm speaking
beyond. I also don't know. I've driven large trucks, but I've never driven earth movers like that.
Yeah, I am speaking beyond my personal experience. So, Yeah, you get him, Dennis.
So yeah, they kind of sped up a few things too. Like in the book, you start to slowly see Lee kind of fall for Dennis, especially after she's seen how awful Arnie is becoming.
Yeah.
And so you got kind of a love triangle going between Christine only wants Arnie to herself, so she doesn't want Lee involved, but Arnie wants Lee. And then, well, it's more like a love rectangle, I guess, because then Dennis is kind of involved because he likes Lee, but first Lee likes Arnie, and then Lee starts to like Dennis, and it's just crazy. It's just drama. Teenage drama.
They cut out actually several deleted scenes of Lee and Dennis really creating a romantic relationship.
Well,
and
there you go.
The movie, I think the only thing you get is she puts her hand on his shoulder when he's in the bulldozer and he's driving. And and I literally justified that to myself where I was like, well, I mean, she might fall over when he's driving. So that's probably why she put her hand on his shoulder, because, they're trying to rescue Arnie and
right.
they haven't really, because, hormones and whatnot.
I just remember I was just watching it and I'm like, man, Lee's getting real chummy with Dennis. That's real fast.
Yeah.
That's dirty. That's totally dirty.
Yeah. I don't remember Arnie dying in the book. Did they mention in the Cliff Notes if Arnie actually dies in the book?
So I guess what happens is when they defeat Christine, Arnie's actually elsewhere, and then it's one of those. It's one of Stephen King's kind of quick, let's tie up all the loose ends kind of an ending where they think they destroy Christine, but then Arnie is somewhere else, and then he mysteriously is killed in a car accident. That sounds like it was Christine, and then it finally comes down to Dennis is like, I'm probably next, is kind of how the book ends.
That's interesting, because in the book, though, it's Christine is feeding off of the driver's life force. And in the movie, that didn't make sense. She's just a demonic entity.
Yeah, they don't actually go into that, but it's totally what she is. She's a demon. She got demons. She's a demon possessed car.
Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna talk about cheesy real quick.
All right.
The ending of this movie. Okay, so I was watching this movie and I'm like, this movie's actually really serious. Like, it doesn't go for cheap laughs, for cheap scares. It plays it seriously. It's more of a drama, I would say, with a killer car in it, and I think that's actually why it plays pretty well. And then the last scene in this movie, you have the detective show up randomly, and they're just looking at Christine after she's been squished together as junk, and they're just talking. And I'm like, first of all, the detective, why would he even be like, oh yeah, that makes sense? He would have found Arnie's dead body and been like, okay, so Arnie tried to kill them, and then they ended up destroying the car, so they're probably going to jail too. But that would be it'd be a lot more convoluted of an ending. But then the movie, they're just like, yep. And then that's it. And I was like, that actually was really, I think it's a horrible ending.
It was terrible. And I just, as soon as Lee says, I hate rock and roll, I was like, someone needs to slap that girl. That is,
that's so
bite
funny.
Your tongue.
Yeah, my wife started laughing. She's like, that is the best line ever. She's like, I hate rock and roll. And I was like, dude, that's the freaking 50s doo-wop music. But yeah,
all right,
it's pretty funny.
Well, I definitely feel like it's not Carpenter's best work, but it's like, I do feel like it was kind of a solid movie. I don't feel like it was his best work. Like I said earlier, I definitely feel like it's more King than Carpenter, though you do see Carpenter's, touches, often in the movie, but it definitely doesn't feel like it's his movie, I would say.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. Are you ready to roll into final part of the...
Yeah, let's wrap it up here. So,
all right.
Do you think it hit the mark in 83?
Well, okay, so we talked about this before. Did it make money? Yeah, it made its money back to twice the amount. So technically, it hit its mark, but no, it didn't, because a lot of fans did not like it. So I'll give it a C, because it made its money, so that's always good. It was not a box office bomb, but it was not well received, so I give it a C.
I struggle with that too, because based on the money, I would have given it a B, but I'm gonna agree with you on giving it a C as far as what the critics and the fans themselves kind of felt about it.
Yeah.
So obviously they all went and saw it, and just were disappointed. So yeah, it's probably a C because it's not a bad movie. It's not terrible. But if you were a huge fan of the book, and especially when that book had just come out and it was a bestseller, yeah, I could see where you would be disappointed that it left kind of a lot out. There's a whole organized crime kind of a thing, sub story that was in the book also. That was not completely, it was barely hinted at in the movie, but
oh yeah, when he's running parts for the guy that used,
the guy that owns the garage that he parks Christine at. That guy was like a total like minor league mobster.
Gotcha.
So there was that whole thing going on. But anyways, so yes, I agree with you. I would say it was probably a C when it came out. What about now? Do you think it hits? Is it relevant now? Did it hit the mark now?
Relevant now. It is a cult classic now. There's definitely a following for this, specifically people that like cars.
Right.
There's a. I wouldn't. It's not a huge cult classic though. Like people that were around when this movie came out know this movie, but if you talk to anybody under the age of 30, probably unless they're Stephen King fans. If you're not a Stephen King fan, you probably haven't heard of this movie or John. Even if you're John,
I was just talking to a buddy at work today. I was like, "Oh yeah, we're doing Christine tonight." He's all, "What?" It's like,
right.
I don't know that movie.
Right. Even if you're a John Carpenter fan, you don't think of this movie. So
right.
It's a cult classic,
but you wouldn't. Yeah, you wouldn't know. Like it's. Yeah. Unless, like you said, unless you're a Carpenter fan, unless you're a King fan, it's not like it. I mean, it is an iconic movie from the 80s, but it's definitely not, The Shining or Carrie. Well, I don't even know if people would know Carrie necessarily, except that they did a remake recently. But I don't know.
Yeah, I agree.
Finish your thoughts.
Yeah, but yeah, okay. I'll give it a C. Yeah, if it's still. Yeah, what about you?
I also gave it a C because I agree that now it really is only a cult classic, cult 80s movie.
Yeah.
So it's, unless you're into those movies, you're really not going to know about it necessarily. Though I feel like this movie has a solid nostalgic feel because it totally gave me the feels big time.
Okay.
So I really, I thought that was great. And I think I could see that's why it would be that cult classic.
It's such a niche film though nowadays because it's not cheesy, it's not gory, and it's not sexual. So it really, you're either a Stephen King fan, you're a John Carpenter fan, or you've seen this movie before.
Right.
So it's definitely a niche cult classic.
I just had one little thought that it's definitely an 80s movie that's in love with the 50s.
Yeah.
I know there was kind of like a real resurgence of love for the 50s in the late 70s and early 80s. You had like Brian Setzer's band, the Stray Cats, kind of blew up. You had the movie Grease. You had George Lucas's American Graffiti. You had Back to the Future. So you had a lot of this like, the 50s were super cool.
Yeah.
In that late 70s, early 80s.
Which total side note. Why is Back to the Future called Back to the Future?
That's a question for another time.
Okay.
We could be on that one for a minute.
Okay.
So I had another thought, and you've actually brought this up before with different movies. Like, hey, could you remake this movie today?
Oh yeah.
And I don't think so with this one. I think you could have retold this movie in the 90s, in the early 2000s. I think you could have told it even.
Yeah.
But I feel like today it doesn't really work. And in 2020, I've also read recently read articles and watched some videos about rock and roll is totally at like an all-time low. It's not huge in pop culture like it was even 5-10 years ago. Kids these days aren't as motivated to get their driver's license. I happen to have a said teenager she's just not in a hurry to get her driver's license. And I think that was something that I couldn't wait to get.
Yeah.
And not that there aren't kids today that do want to get their driver's license, but there's just a lot that are very relaxed about it. I don't know if it's because of Uber and Lyft, but yeah, I don't think this movie would translate as well and have the emotional impact
that
it would have.
Yeah. No, that's actually really fascinating. I didn't think about it. That's a great point. Yeah. I also too, when I saw that car on fire in the movie, I was just like, this would not be as cool because you would know it's not real. It's digital. And the fact that I'm watching this and I'm like,
you're like, that's really on fire.
It's freaking real. Yeah. So yeah, I agree. I don't think this movie would do very well as a remake.
Yeah. It definitely it speaks to people of a certain age, which is funny to be a person saying that now.
Right?
But
Yeah.
I mean, to me, I'm still that way now. Like I love just driving around and blasting some tunes. I mean, just today I'm driving home and I'm blasting NoFX's The Decline, just
Ooh.
cranking it and
Yes.
get pumped going home.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm the same way. Like my wife and I love doing road trips, blasting music, and just being on the open road.
Yeah.
That's our new sense of freedom now is road trips, which is funny
Sure.
because you're right. When you get the car, you're like freedom, and then like when you get older, you find other avenues of that feeling of freedom as well.
Sure. But then sometimes it all comes back to a car again, which is interesting.
It
Okay.
is.
Enough of that. Personal enjoyment.
Personal enjoyment. Okay, so this one, watching it again. This one actually, it's another slow burn. I was surprised at like how slow paced this movie is for the majority of the film. So I would give this movie a C. Personal enjoyment. It's a solid film. Definitely. Did I like it as much as when I first saw this? Probably, actually. Like I did.
Yeah.
I did enjoy it. It's a good film. I was looking forward to rewatching it. But at the same time, though, I would never just like pop this movie in and be like, oh yeah, I want to watch Christine tonight. I actually rewatched it on the intention of we're going to review it. So yeah, I give it a C. It was a solid film. What about you?
I feel like I consistently rate personal enjoyment higher, so I don't.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of a problem.
Maybe I'm depressed. Who knows?
I don't. No, I just think when you give a higher rating, it's going to be more impactful than oh, there's Josh. He's got another high rating.
Well, maybe it could also be like, hey, oh, Josh really hated that movie. I need to watch that movie now.
That could be. Dude, it's just another movie that it got me so pumped emotionally. Just like I said, bringing me back to when I had my first car and all the experiences with that. And so I give it a B. I mean, I like the book. I'm with you. I haven't read it in at least 10 or 12 years, but I honestly, I mean, when you look at a screenplay version of a book, and he doesn't tend to write small books. I mean, he does short stories, obviously, but this was a decent sized novel, and I thought the screenplay version was pretty good. So,
Yeah, I think it's funny you mentioned that, though. Actually, I feel that most of the time Stephen King's better movies are based off his short stories or novellas because he is. It's easier for a screenwriter to actually convert it into a movie format.
Yeah.
Instead
Well,
of
it gives them wiggle room. They can actually add a little bit if they want.
Yeah.
Versus how much we're going to cut out of this thing.
Yeah.
They can totally like, oh, let's make it a little bit more.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. So that's I think that about wraps it up for good old Christine. Oh, real quick, Christine. It's named after Christine Romero, George Romero's wife, since Stephen King was friends with George Romero they did a lot of stuff together in the 80s.
Right. I forget, correct me if I'm wrong, is this another one that he wanted Romero to direct?
I don't know.
Or was that, maybe that was something else we were looking at. But yeah, you're right. He was friends with Romero. For sure.
So that is where the name Christine comes from, because they don't say it in the movie, and I didn't finish reading the book again, so I'm not sure about that. But anywho.
All right. Well, you know what time it is.
It's that time again. All right, so we are up for the quote of the day for the clue for the next week's episode. So here you go, guys. Let's do it. What's your name, kid?
The human spider.
The human spider. That's it? That's all you got?
Yeah.
Oh, that sucks. The sum of $3,000 will be paid to the terrifying, the deadly, the amazing, and that's all you get for the quote. So
right, that next one it's too easy.
It's too easy. Yeah, no. So absolutely. So you gotta check it out. Guess also too. Subtle clue. Which one? Which one of what are we talking about?
Yeah,
so that's it. So we're going to stop talking now, but that's it for today. If you want to check out this movie, I actually did have to rent it on Amazon Prime.
And I rented it on iTunes.
Oh, how much did you pay for it?
$3.99. Which
yeah.
I feel like that's kind of a lot for an old 80s movie that's not very popular.
Oh, I actually watched this movie in 4K, and
Oh man.
Yeah, it wasn't
Fancy.
worth it. So we'll blame it on my TV. Yeah. So all right. Well, special thanks to our sound producer Jake Colvin. If you guys enjoyed this episode, we'd love it if you shared with your friends or family or anybody you think that would enjoy it.
Yes, please hit that subscribe button. Give us a 5-star rating. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, we would super appreciate that. Also, any other positive reviews on whatever other platform you might be listening to this on. Also, if you'd like to contact us, you can email us the Midnight Watch Podcast at gmail.com. We're also on Instagram and also Facebook.
Yes, absolutely. And thanks already, everybody, for the feedback that we've been receiving. It's been pretty awesome. So, yeah, we're excited. We want to keep bringing you great content. And I can't wait for this next episode to drop in a week from now. So
for sure.
Yeah, keep it tuned. Keep the watch up. Keep up the watch. That's what I'm trying to say. Keep watching.
And as always.
Yes, there we go. And as always, keep up the watch.